Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Maria. For the benefit of us all and for the benefit of the recording, Maria is a licensed clinical psychologist and psychotherapist specialized in adolescents and adults, and she joined the NALFO clinics in 2012 and heads the Children and Adolescents Unit. She conducts individual psychotherapy and cognitive assessments using a wide range of tests. Maria is specialized in clinical work with adolescents suffering from several psychological difficulties such as anxiety, hyperactivity, depression, phobia, and relationship conflicts, to name a few. Maria also does school intervention plans. So thank you, Maria, for joining us today, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you for hosting me. Thank you, ladies, for inviting me, and Bruce for the introduction. So I'm more than pleased to do a private counseling session, but would be welcoming anyone else. So today we will talk about the risk-taking behavior in adolescents in time of crisis, like nowadays with the pandemic or even political crisis, and beyond. So I will share with you a PowerPoint presentation, and this way everyone can follow me. Just give me a second to be able to do that. It should work now. Voila. Okay. So the topic idea came from a discussion with Dana, the counselor, where we were thinking like, what topic about adolescents could be interesting, and then we thought that risk-taking behavior is something very, very common and something we always receive in the clinic, and that schools also suffer from with their students as much as parents suffer from with their children. So first of all, like quickly, let's think together what is adolescence. And adolescence, of course, is a journey, and it starts at 13, sometimes around 11, 12, until not only 19. We say it's from 13 till 19, but it's actually from more or less 13 to more or less 19, 20, 21, or 22. Because more and more we have this society phenomena about long-lasting adolescence. So it's a period of transition from childhood to adulthood, and it will affect the adolescent in many ways, mostly physiologically, and by that I mean also biologically. So not only what we see from the outside, the height, the weight, the voice, the pilosity, everything, but also biologically, but by what I mean hormones, okay, and neurological development of the brain. Psychologically as well, and I mean by that the relationships, self-esteem, self-confidence, anxiety, because it's almost around adolescence that we sometimes have the start of what we call anxiety and the mood swings, depression, or a bit more than a depression. And then socially, of course, because the adolescents will try to get out of the shell of the parents and from the shadow of the parents to be able to build their own personality. And how will they be able to? In becoming more and more social and trying to fit into social groups with peers that they meet at school or in the neighborhood or during certain activities. Now, what we have noticed, for instance, and I'm based on some researches that have been done in the south of Italy, about what could the current circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic, how could it impact the adolescents? And we have noticed that the first thing that adolescents report is the fact that they felt cut off from their friends, but also mostly from their daily routine. For instance, from their schools, from their future plans, from their activities. And since here we're talking about high schoolers, so many, and you can see this, I guess, in IC, I don't know what IT have decided, but So many schools did not do any graduation plans or proms. So many events have been postponed or even cancelled. And we should not forget that also we have many adolescents who live in conflictual homes or who live some conflictual dynamics with their parents. So school and extracurricular activities outside the home were an escape for the adolescent. So this adolescent living in a conflictual environment, when he or she found themselves confined at home, we notice more and more behavioral or mood problems. Okay, any questions so far? Please don't hesitate. You ask a question or send it to the chat. So as you can see by this quick picture, this is how we can a bit draw what is adolescence, is the feeling of being lost, confused, unsure, disoriented, unclear. And it's like the road signs. We don't know which one to pick, which road to take, which one is shorter, which one is safer. So the first question that would come to our mind is actually, what is a risky behavior? How many types of risky behavior there are? Because there are positive as much as there are negative. So it's not when we say risk taking, it doesn't always mean negative. It could also be positive, and I'm going to explain how and why. So first of all, what is a risk-taking behavior? It's simply a behavior that puts someone's life in danger, and put them in an unsafe situation. So, and here there is also something very important to keep in mind. It's not only putting the child or the adolescent's life in danger, but also they put others people's life in danger. So, for instance, if an adolescent will drive on the highway and drunk, it's not only they put themselves at risk, but they can put the other people driving on the same highway at risk. Okay, so the risky behavior goes for both parts, the adolescents and those who are connected to this adolescent. So why do they take risks? And there are factors which are biological and psychological. Let's agree on one thing, that it is normal for teenagers to push boundaries and to take risks, because this is a recurrent question that I get at the clinic, like, is this normal or not? Yes, it is normal. Why it is normal? Because as I said earlier, since adolescence is a journey, so the adolescent will grow from childhood to be able to pass to the adulthood, they have to build a personality, which means to discover their identities. And by this, it's not only the sexual identity by being a boy or a girl, but also by identity is the taste, is the interest, is self-esteem, and everything related to the personality. And they also will want more and more become independent young adults. So it is very normal to want to untie from the parents. Otherwise, they will not grow outside of their comfort zone. So this is quickly, if you want, as a psychological factor. We will talk a bit more about it. Biologically, what happens? Biologically, during adolescence, the brain will keep on changing. Actually, our brain keep on changing daily until our mid-20s, and in some people until their late 20s. So around the age of 25 until 28, our brain will daily change from our daily experiences and the emotions that we will be feeling. So this means that the teenagers, they will want to develop a judgment, and they are able to have a judgment. They are able to have a reasoning, but this does not mean that they are fully equipped. So we will allow them to have a judgment. We will allow them to share their opinions. It doesn't mean that they always are right. What happens in our brain? Actually, I will go to this picture. Voilà. This is several images of our brain, okay, from the side, and from the front. So our brain develops until the age of 25, 28. And it's our prefrontal cortex, so the one on the front, okay? It's the area with the blue color on the screen. This is the last area to develop in our brain. Why? Because as all of you know, our brain develops from the back till the front. So the prefrontal cortex, where the judgment happens and where the reasoning happens and which distinguish us from the animal world, this is where our sensations and our judgment is located. Okay, you can see it here on the picture. So what happens with time, with the circumstances and situations, our brain will adjust. This is why adolescents, much more than children and much more than adults, they tend to be impulsive and they tend to have more problems of controlling their impulse and more problems of inhibiting some behaviors, okay? Until they mature around the age of 25 and 28. Another thing happens in our brain is that the brain will always look for a reward. So a child, for instance, when you give them a sugar or a candy, they are rewarded, even though sugar is not always healthy. Why? Because the brain translated as a reward, even if it's toxic. So what happens in adolescence is that the adolescent will try to take risk, to breach rules. But if once they breach the rules and they find it rewarding, even if it's very negative, they will tend to repeat it more and more because they like this sensation. They like this rewarding feeling. This is what happens actually in adolescents who first try some alcohol substances or drug substances. This is how the biological phenomenon starts. I will just check one question. Yes. So here there is a question about stress and storm and how it is related. This is exactly related to what I've been saying. So the adolescent can be in a stressful situation. A stressful situation does not mean is because they are in conflict with their parents or with their teacher or because they did not or they failed an exam. A stressful situation is any situation that put the adolescent at the edge of being self-confident, okay? So it could be peer pressure, it could be something that is physiologically tiring them. So what happens is that the brain cannot always cope, and the brain will start looking for more and more rewarding situations. These situations are not always rewarding. They can have one candy and then 10 candies, and it will not be enough. So they are taken in something that we call like a volcano, which is developing dependency and trying more and more to look for a certain rewarding experience or substance to calm this sensation of stress. So I hope it's clear because we're going to talk about it more later on. Other stress factors that we can find are definitely the social media tools. Why? Because the social media tools, they will exhibit some ideas and some images that go and tackle straightforward the self-esteem of the adolescents. So they will show idols and they will show some ideal thoughts to which the adolescents will look to identify with. So for instance, they will show a musician, a very famous musician who's very rich and very popular, climbing high rocks on a mountain with no safety measures, and the adolescent will think that this is what will make me famous. So adolescents basically look a lot to identify with the others. Children usually identify with the parents. Girls see how their moms are and they try to imitate them. And boys see how their fathers are and imitate them. And sometimes girls imitate fathers and boys imitate mothers. So it could be like this. Adolescents will try to identify to other people than their own parents because they get to a point where they see that they want to untie from their parents. They want to take their distance from their parents. So what happens is that they will go and look for other identification figures. And these figures cannot really be teachers. They can actually rarely be teachers because usually adolescents, they connect parents to teachers and teachers to parents. So they will go and look for other adults, maybe siblings, maybe cousins, and definitely friends and peers with them in class. So how does this identification process happen? Is that they will try to fit into groups. And how do groups bond together is by sharing some common points. For instance, what they would share is something very simple, very basic, wearing the same brand of clothes, having the same musical taste or artistic taste, having some similar outgoing activities. And this constitutes a lot of pressure on the adolescent and a source of anxiety because they will feel if they do not cope with the rest of the group, they will be bullied, they will be excluded, they will not be loved. So more and more, we tend to see in our clinics and our researchers show that most of the problems and risk-taking behaviors are done within groups. For instance, in Lebanon last year in 2019, if you look at the statistic of the IFS about the adolescent car crashes, and we found out that they happen mostly when the adolescents are with their friends rather than when they are alone or when they steal the car and drive it alone, or more than when they are under the effect of alcohol. So this is a simple example. So here in the picture, what you can see is how can we weigh risk and reward, and why often we see our children and our adolescents taking the risk. Simply, for them, it's not taking the risk could be a bigger risk, which means that not going into this dangerous activity, which will mean that they will be downgraded within their group of friends, they will be looked at as a coward, they will not be loved anymore. And for others, not taking the risk will mean that they will always be under the rules of their parents. And adolescents know that they cannot stay all the time under the rules of their parents because otherwise they will not grow into their own experiences. So if you look at the picture on the right, it asks us when not taking risk could be the bigger risk. Because risk-taking is an escape from anxiety for many adolescents, from the anxiety of peer pressure, from the anxiety of not understanding what's going on in their own physiological changes. Risk-taking could also be a relief from death awareness. And this is actually what we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. What happened during the COVID-19 pandemic? Children and families were all asked to be confined together in one place and to keep social distance from the people who are not their family members. But what we found out that so many adolescents were gathering together under the building in other homes, and which put them under risk. Why? Because there was this anxiety to deal with a virus, an invisible virus that is putting their health at risk. Some other adolescents who are more of a depressive profile, but I will not go a lot into this because this is a topic on the side, also like to take risks, to test death and to test life. So we can see it in Russian roulette. Adolescents love this. Or for instance, adolescents who are more and more playing at the choking game. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's also very common nowadays. So basically bringing a choker ribbon, putting around the neck, and each one pulling the choker on the neck of the other to see who is going to fall down before the other. So they take this risky behavior to test life and death. And another reason, which is because they have a low self-esteem. And this is the most common reason and the thing we find the most in our clinic. So self-esteem is basically an anxiety buffer. It helps to eradicate or to decrease the anxiety. So here we come to the other question that has been asked also in the private chat room is what makes that some adolescents are more risk takers than others? And this is a very interesting question. Sometimes we see that in the same family, between siblings, one is a risk taker and another is not. So if you want to think only biologically, but I personally don't think only biologically, we have to always combine biological, physiological, and social factors, okay? So if you think only biologically, it is related to an inner maturational process. And with time, the adolescent is meant to acquire more maturity, but is not enough. What is needed is also a certain environment. So what happens why someone's son will take risk, but the sister of this boy will not take risk, or vice versa? But usually boys are more risk takers than girls. So what determines it? What happens is that, first of all, you have to look what is the ideal for them. From whom do they learn their behavior? From whom do they take their behavior? Because often we can see in families when we have parents who are struggling with each other, when the couple is struggling, or perhaps one of the parents is having some psychological struggle, like dependency, alcohol dependency, gambling dependency, we can find here some genetic factors. We will always find a gene factor, okay? Sometimes when we don't find, we will look about the relationship at home. Do we have very, very strict parents that the child feels he or she cannot outcome the parents, cannot build their personality, they cannot communicate? This could be a way that the adolescent will use to attract the attention of the parents, but moreover to punish the parent and to tell the parent, look, I can harm myself, you can lose me, you do not possess me. Another thing could be that the adolescent have very overprotective parents and very nice and kind parents. And we always see this as well. We have parents who come to our clinics and ask us, but I'm offering everything to my child. They have our presence, they have our listening, we allow them to do what they want. And that's another problem, because some children who have very flexible parents tend to want to feel some structure. Adolescents always need some structure and limits because they are afraid of themselves. They are afraid of the potential they can have to breach the rules. So sometimes this is their way to tell parents, please come and put some rules. Please be more firm with me. And usually when we advise the parents to be more strict, to put more realistic rules, and I'm going to talk about this later on, the adolescent calms down. We will also ask the parents to look what's outside the house, which means to look at the groups that the children are following. At school, who are the people they hang with? On internet, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and all the other social media applications. Who are they following? Who are they learning from? Who are their idols? If their idol is someone who sniffs cocaine every night, is not like someone whose idol is to write poems. So this is also very important for parents to look for. Also, is to look what us as parents we show to our children. If, for instance, we tell our children, no, you cannot, like now, for instance, I'll give you an example that happens at the clinic the other day. A parent telling me that they are trying to establish rules for their children. So they told their children they cannot take them to where they were meant to be because their car plate number does not allow them to drive on this day. However, they brought them to my clinic, which was a day where they were not supposed to drive their car. And they said, yeah, it's okay because we know what to say to the police to let us pass. So this example is very simple, but shows that sometimes also parents breach the rules without knowing. So they send a double-bind message to their children, a double-bind, which means paradoxical message for their children. So this also could be a reason. And also the commercial illusions. For instance, pornography is an example of a commercial illusion. We don't perhaps monitor enough our children when they are 14 and 15. So the images they see on internet, they tend to think that are very acceptable. Well, no, they are not real. They are perhaps acceptable, but they are not real, okay? This is why also we find around the age of 16, 17, so many teenagers who want to test their sexuality by copying what they see on pornographic movies, and it ends up in a huge risk-taking because they put their life in danger and the life of their partner. Any question? Am I going fast, slow, or is it okay?
Going well so far, Maria.
Okay, so I'll continue. Okay, we're almost over. So now, as I said in the beginning, thank you, Cynthia. So as I said in the beginning, a risky behavior is a behavior that puts someone's life in danger, whereas it's the life of the adolescent or the life of any person who is related to this adolescent. But we have some positive risk-taking behavior and some negative risk-taking behavior, so let us see the difference together. So in deciding to take risks, we usually have to weigh the reward and the consequences. Is it worth taking or it's not worth taking? And this is the paradox of risk-taking, because we want to feel the sensation and the rewards, even if it's sometimes a toxic consequence. And as I said earlier, adolescents are capable of judgment, but not always, and they are not always fully equipped for this. So what is a positive risk-taking behavior, as you can see down here? It's about learning new things, exploring new territory, getting out of our comfort zone. Why is it positive? It's positive because of the feeling that it will give us. It is positive because it will help us to face our fear and especially to develop a new skill. So many adolescents, for instance, they will never dare to make a class presentation. For them, this is a risk-taking because their classmates will make fun of them and might bully them. But then when we encourage them, they will see that, oh, this went well, so they have learned a new skill. And perhaps they have earned the appreciation of their friends. What could be, for instance, some positive risk-taking behaviors in sports, in football, in basketball, in dancing, gymnastics? They are not easy activities and they are not given to anyone. And this is what we can tell our child, that you are taking a risk and it's not given to anyone, but you would not be in this activity if you did not have the potential. In arts, in volunteering, sometimes they are afraid to volunteer, sometimes they are afraid to meet old people, poor children, but once they do it, they feel that they have done something good for themselves and for the community. And in education as well, taking this quiz or this competition. So the keyword would be to know about the consequence. Here, oh, I can see it's very blurry. I don't know why. Anyway, I will tell you what it's about, because it's a quick graphic about what could be the negative risk-taking. First of all, it could be addictions. Addictions to cigarettes, to drugs, to alcohol, to pills, to medications, okay? Any adrenaline sport that put their life at risks, for instance, bungee jumping, or I don't know, the other things, we don't really have them in Lebanon, but they could be like extreme sports. Aggression, violence, vandalism. Vandalism, I mean destroying public properties. So risk-taking could also be anything that will put them face to face with the law and in which the adolescent would risk to be presented to the court or to the police station. Risk-taking could also be some sexual behavior that could simply go that not being protected, having unprotected sexual act, to sending nudes over the phone or by the computer, or manipulating someone to send them nude pictures, okay? So risk-taking activities could be breaking the law or also breaking the privacy of someone or our own privacy. Vandalism, robbery, all these things, okay? So how to identify if it is positive or negative? First of all, we will identify them by the consequence. Does it put you face to face with the law? Does it put you in harm? Does it put anyone around you at harm? Okay, and then the adolescent will weigh. Which reward will I get? Is it a short-term reward or a long-term reward? If I will go shoplift and I will take this alcohol bottle, is it short-term or a long-term? I will enjoy this alcohol bottle today, but maybe tomorrow the police will contact me, or maybe the police will not know and the shop will not know. But on the long run, I will develop certain dependency to shoplifting and dependency to alcohol. So we will only know if it's negative by the consequence, okay? The consequence on the self, on others, and with the law and on society. So some will ask us, is it possible to turn a negative behavior into a positive one? And if yes, how? First of all, we always encourage parents to communicate with their children. Nothing can be done without communication, okay? But the communication should not be forced or reinforced that listen to me, I know you don't know. No, it will be give and take. It will be a conversation in which we will listen, during which we will listen to the adolescent, also to the question and to the reasoning of the adolescent, and then we will share our own reasoning. So it's a conversation. It's not something oppressive. We are not in prison. However, it's not a negotiation. And this is a very important keyword, because if we will negotiate with the adolescent, okay, I will allow you to come back at 10, but tomorrow you will come at 9, it will never work, because at the end of the day, our child has to know that the parent has the last word. So how can we turn the negative behavior into a positive one when it is possible? First of all, as parents, we have to think, what are the values? What are our own values that we believe in and that we want to transmit to our child? Like the example I told you about this family who breach the rules with the police when they want, but then they tell their child, you cannot do this. No, if I believe I cannot breach the law, I have to tell my child and to show my child that. Second thing, we make a list of privileges, which means that we will ask our child, what does she or he value? What is a positive behavior? How our behavior could have a positive impact on us and on others. This will be through a conversation. And then we can agree on consequences together. For instance, if you will not be back home at 12, then tomorrow you will not go out, or next week you will not go out. So we agree on consequences before accepting anything with our child. However, and this is important, consequences have to be applied. It's not that tomorrow I will change my mind. And both parents, when it's possible for both parents to be together, have to agree on the same consequences. This is why consequences have to be consistent, but also fit the issue, realistic. For instance, if the child comes home late, I will not punish him from food. It does nothing have to do with the curfew. No, what has to do is that next outgoing, you will not be with your friends. Or if I catch my son smoking, I will not go and tell him you will not go to the school. It has nothing to do with it. I will tell him, okay, you need money to buy cigarettes. I will cut money for a week. You see, it has to fit really the issue. So how could it be prevented? Because ideally is to try as much as possible not to get into a negative behavior. As I said, it will depend on how we will help our teens to build their personalities. And by this, I also mean to give them sometimes some positive reinforcement. For instance, to tell them, tell me what you think about this new table that I bought. Something as simple as this will let the child feel that their opinion matters. Also, talking about values, role models, we have to be good role models for our children. We have to keep also an eye on their surrounding. Knowing the consequence is always essential. And this is an interesting idea that I forgot to mention earlier, showing them alternatives. What does it mean? Is that when I tell my child that you cannot go to this party with your friends because I know that there will be drugs ongoing and I don't want you to risk to drink something in which we have poured some drugs. And the child will say, no, you never let me, everyone goes and have fun and I cannot. We will show alternative. You can say, next time you can throw a party at home, or why don't you ask your friends to change the place of the gathering? Or we can say, well, fine, but I don't feel comfortable, so every 30 minutes I will be calling you to make sure that you are still having fun and no one is bothering you, we have to show them alternatives. It's not yes and no and that's it. This is why communication with teens is very, very important. Here, before ending, I want to show you this board that you can screenshot or anything, in which you can do it with your own child. We see a column of consequences on health, on psychological and psychosocial well-being. Is it a criminal, so something that has to do with the law, and the whole society. And we can see who is the risk taker, who are the nearby people who are involved, family and friends, and what are the losses by taking all these risks. Okay? So this is something in which you can work it on with your child. Now I will look at the questions before time's up. So first question. Is it possible to get a risk-taking teenager to get into positive risk-taking? Yes, we spoke about this. And have that positive feeling replace negative risk-taking behavior? Yes, we can. As I said before, communication, role models, finding alternatives. But also, it's very important to understand the motives behind such a risk-taking behavior. So as I said in the beginning of the presentation, is the motive personal, psychological? Is it low self-esteem? Is it anxiety? Is it something to which your child needs to talk to a counselor or psychotherapist about? Or is the motive something going wrong with the communication between child and parent? Is it peer pressure? Is it self-esteem? And often we have self-esteem issues. Okay? Second question, what about risky behavior under the framework of school? Exactly. Knowing that sometimes school consequences can also push into more risky behavior out of fear or rebellious reason. Yeah, very nice question. Yes, of course. No one says that a risky behavior should happen only in one environment. So if it happens at home, it can happen at school, it can happen in malls, and vice versa. Sometimes risk-taking and often happens at school. And here we go back to the motives and to the reasons. Usually what we find out is either the child is in a very oppressive home, they cannot self-express at home. So they find that at school, they have more possibility to self-express. They will get more attention because there will be a director and a counselor and teachers who will be later on moderators between the child and the family. Another reason about risk-taking, it would be peer pressure. So someone who's not self-confident enough will be challenged at school to take a certain risk to better come out as a responsible, funny, strong personality. And another reason, it could be very personal, a child suffering from big anxiety that could lead to depression, that they can harm themselves without even knowing that they are self-harming. They are only self-harming because that this is their only way out, because the anxiety is very strong to tolerate. So when these happen at schools, it is very challenging because the school will go, first of all, observe the peers dynamic between peers, the dynamic between the teachers and the child. And then will be in touch with the family. And sometimes it's not enough, so they will have to be in touch with the more specialized people, like therapists and psychiatrists and doctors. I hope it's clear. Another question. Why will some kids still engage in risky behavior despite knowing right from wrong and also not wanting the parents to know about it? Yes. Here we come back to this building of the personality. And children want to untie and to distinguish themselves from their parents. So they say, I will take risks without my parents knowing, because if my parents will know, there will be consequences. Or if my parents know, there might not be consequences, but they will worry for me. And I don't want them to worry for me. I want to protect them. I love them so much. I want to protect them. So they go and have some other risky behavior elsewhere. Often, if you will look, it will be with friends and not alone. Rarely risk-taking behavior happens individually, and when it happens individually, it has to do with anxiety, depression, and self-esteem. Is it clear? Perhaps you'd like me to clarify or work more on my answers? Let me know. I guess these are all the questions.
I think, Maria, it's very clear and very detailed. It's very good, very interesting.
Thank you. Voila. So as you can see in the last picture, I combined the adolescents in the middle. On the left side, you have the family, from which the adolescent will try to stay part of it, but also to grow as a self, as a person by him or herself. And on the other side, you have the group of friends. And the group of friends are very important because they need to exist into a society. They need to build their own opinions and tastes. So the challenge for parents and for adolescents is to find the middle way between these two. Voilà.
Maria, thank you very much. We're thinking as counselors, a lot of students come to us having done risky behavior, and our role is a bit, like for example, I'm talking about you talked about sending nudes, don't know, taking something, can be drugs, smoking for the first time, stuff like this. So sometimes our role is, it's more like, I'm telling you, it's a comment more than a question. So it's, no, I think it goes again to the role of the school.
Yes, and then it's hard. It's hard because there's an ethicality issue, especially when it comes to confidentiality.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, you're under the realm of a school, and
they are minors.
And they are minors. So basically, what would be maybe an advice for us as counselors?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, actually,
when suddenly someone comes and tells us.
It's tough, huh? For counselors, as for parents, I think number one advice is prevention. To work on prevention programs from young ages, so children can start to know the consequences. Prevention, work more and more on activities that build a community of not only strong personalities and competition, but to work on growing self-esteem. And in Lebanon, we see it more than elsewhere. We have so many schools that work only on competition and on rivalry, and this does not help. So we also have to help our students to identify their skills, and each one has different skills. This is what I always tell them in the clinic. Each one is rich of something. The siblings in the same house, each one is rich of something. So to identify their potential and help them grow their potential. This is the second thing. And I guess as counselors, it's important, and I know you do it, all of you, and you're really a big thank you to all of you because you are behind all this great work. You enhance positive communication. So having this trust relationship with the students is important. And explaining to the student that any action that will be taken in agreement with them and only for their own benefit. So they will see it as a protection rather than betrayal of confidentiality. And when there is a student, and there could be many students who refuse, even if they know it's for their own benefit, and then we try to understand what's behind it. So I go back to understand what is the motive behind it. I hope it's helpful.
Yes.
I can't hear you properly. I think you're disconnecting, maybe. I think Rama and Dana are having connection issues.
We froze. Yes, you are.
Yeah, now you're back.
Okay.
You'd like me to repeat? Were you able to?
No,
listen?
we heard. No, we heard it. We heard.
Okay. Yeah.
We really had a question now, since Mr. Knox already is recording this. It's gonna go to the whole all the parents of the secondary school. So definitely, I think it's very important for them, for everyone to hear this, parents and staff, and yeah, because you know sometimes there's a nuance between what's okay and what's not. You know, so that's it's always there's a thin line. Is he doing this because he's not okay? Is he doing this because it's normal? So I think now you made it very clear.
True. There is a new question just popped out because we still have 3 minutes.
Yes.
When a child has strength and as a parent you try to encourage them, but they don't accept, what can you do? Well, yes, when they don't accept, it doesn't mean you will stop. You will keep trying because they will record it. Adolescents record things even if they don't show it to you, because they would want to hear it more and more because they need these positive injections, okay? So you keep on reminding them this, and one day you will feel the difference. How will you feel the difference? Because one day you and your child will be in a situation, perhaps with friends or with neighbors or with cousins, and the child, her or himself, will say something from what you've told them. And this is when you will notice, oh, wow, they did register something, okay? Or you will send them on a trip and you will be very anxious. And then the child will come and tell you, it was a great day and I didn't smoke with anyone. My friends were smoking and I told them to stop. That they will surprise you. So the same way they try to breach rules for you to put rules and be strict and to protect them, the same way they will show you that they don't listen, but they will be recording it. And when the time comes, you will figure it out together. So don't stop doing it.
I have a question. It's a bit, you know, you have the parents who believe, we tell our child, don't do this, you shouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. Or you have the others, the parents who will tell you, I would like my child to try with me. Anything, like drinking, smoking, the first time with me. What do you believe? How do you see it?
Here, okay, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. And there is like, we cannot generalize it because it's very tricky. You have the families. So exactly, depends on the child. Why? Because you have to see if the child basically has tendency to break rules a lot or not. So you have parents, when they see their child can break the rules a lot, they tell him, لا يا عمي خلاص, I prefer that you try with me rather than others. But why is it tricky? Because the minute they start, the child will go and apply it elsewhere. We see it a lot with smoking shisha, ergile, and drinking alcohol, etc. So if your child basically has tendency to breach rules, the more you can wait and postpone these experiences, the better. But if you have a child who is only like curious, but with a lot of self-awareness, that's fine.
I think that's,
Okay, because just one thing, I forgot to say this, adolescents like to defy. So the more you give them opportunities to defy, they will grab it. Be careful.
True. Makes sense.
That's it.
Okay, great. That was really nice.
Yes.
And we learned a lot.
Yeah, we did really.
Thank you. I also enjoyed a lot your presence and your conversations and your questions. And thank you for the ladies for their questions. Really,
Yes,
it was very
indeed.
interesting.
Yes.
And
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
everyone.
it.
Thank you a lot, Maria.
Thank
and,
you. Have a nice weekend.
Yes. And we'll
Thank you all.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
Definitely.
We have a question. Oh no.
No, that's the old question.
That's the
No.
old question. Connection problems again.
Sorry, this is Lebanon. The connection, yeah, I know.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Mr. Knox, anything you want to say?
Just a thank you again to Maria for giving up her time this afternoon. Again, a wonderful opportunity for us to think critically about our kids that we have at home that we love dearly, and the kids that we have at school that we love almost as dearly.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Maria, and thank you to our people who've joined us today. And we'll call it a night on that one. Thank you very much for coming, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. See you. Bye-bye.